40 people weighing in on a poll this morning. Haven't had that amount of people weighing in on a poll for a while. 13 said yes, they agree with the day of rest and reflection. 27 said no. All right. And if I had to vote today, I would definitely vote 28.
Well, I don't agree with conflating all the pertinent issues. The issues are pertinent that Mrs. DeFreitas has raised.
Yeah.
School repairs not completed. They have the right to advocate for the best package that they're supposed to on behalf of the membership. I have no problem with that.
Correct.
I vehemently disagree with suggesting that parents are sending their children to school for teachers to babysit them. That is a generalization that is so far from the truth. It's not funny.
It is.
And doesn't help your cause.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And that parents don't prioritize their children.
Don't prioritize the children's education. Yeah. That's nonsense.
That's a crazy stuff.
It's nonsense. It's
some
just
of the worst parents
it's nonsense.
Prioritize that.
It is making spurious arguments to support your case, which if your case is strong, you don't need to.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
and as I said, the people who's in context of massive learning loss, who's suffering more, and then saying it is not a significant loss, but your aim is disruption. That's the aim.
Yeah.
Let's not kid ourselves. Your aim is disruption.
Yeah.
So, all right, disrupt. Who's suffering? Children. Well,
yeah.
Up it helps because to me, the way to go is to get the support of the parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because parents are voters and parents are constituents.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if you get this, and I don't think a day of rest and reflection, which is something that seems to be happening every year now, we might as well forget the first day of school, but then they might put it in Tuesday because it seems that every year now is the day of rest and reflection.
Yeah.
Not much rest, you know, much reflection you need to do, but apparently you need more.
We kicking the opening day can down the road.
Yeah.
One day down the road. Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of conversation, changing topic, full stop, new sentence.
Yeah.
We're going to segue there without any indicator. This, we'll have to call it a murder that occurred at the Bricks Hotel of this young lady.
Yeah.
Has sparked quite a bit of conversation on social media.
I saw.
And they calling the boy, he's a local artist. Mm-hmm. There's the presumption that he's a bad boy. I don't know the young man, so I don't know.
I don't know him either.
You understand? But there's that implication in the conversation. But why she chose to be with him? Because she was the top ACCA achiever in 2019.
Yeah.
Was working Price Waterhouse, which means she had a good head on her shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And the conversation about whether or not, because I think the father in one of the articles I saw said if he had known, he would have stopped the relationship.
Yeah. I saw that too.
Yeah, implying again that he was not the kind of young man that she should have been with. I saw people circulating a post. I don't know how accurate it is. People like to inventing and putting on things for social media, saying that I cry Thursday, somebody go cry Friday. I don't know if you all saw that also.
No, I didn't see that one.
With a picture of the young man. I don't know if it's attributable to him, but it seemed like that's what the message was.
Oh.
And whether or not she should have been with him. And I don't know. I'm ambivalent because on one hand, there's the presumption that he's a bad boy, and I don't know that he is.
Yeah.
And the other conversations about the choices young women are making, because from the news reports I saw, she wasn't necessarily the target.
But and that is. Yeah, I
you understand?
I picked up that too, right?
But she wasn't necessarily the target, but she died.
Mm-hmm.
And he was shot, injured very badly, and is hospitalized.
Yeah. But so, you know, what I found curious about the shooting, the reports, let me put the reports coming out of the shooting, is that she was shot in her upper body and he was shot down on his legs. His feet. And I said, okay, is it that the intention was to kill her first anyway and then kill him?
I don't think you come to that conclusion when criminals.
So I didn't come to that conclusion, you know.
They spraying bullet. Who get hit where, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I don't think they shot kindness to kill her first by shooting her in her upper body, then killing her. That's a weird presumption to me, or analysis of it. I think the criminals, the assailants, well, now the murderers, because she's dead, pass, they swing, and just like in Barataria, unfortunately, they just spray bullet. But it goes back to the conversation again about who some young women choose to have in their lives.
I don't even know that is a. I mean, I hear that conversation and it will come up from time to time, but I don't know that you could control who somebody have in their life that way.
We're talking about the choices the person makes. Because again, if it is that he was a bad boy, she chose to be with him.
But maybe she didn't even know.
But that's why I say we don't know, because there's the implication from the conversation that he was a bad boy, and I don't know the person, so I don't know.
Right. So let's go down.
But it also sparked the conversation because based on what her father said also, is that if he had known she was with him, she would have stopped the relationship.
Which almost indicates that it's something pretty recent. You understand?
Or that he didn't know. She was grown, working. Was she living with the father? We don't know.
Well, she had left by him. I assume they were living together.
But then he would know she went.
She was going to line with some friends for her birthday.
Okay.
Right? That's what I saw reported in the newspaper.
Well, what I want to get at is it goes back to a comment the Prime Minister made. He may not have made it in the most graceful way. When he said, quote unquote, I can't choose for you in your bedroom. But it goes down to you need people, not only women, men need to really choose wisely.
Yeah.
And who you choose to have at your side these days could mean the difference between life and death, clearly.
And who you're choosing in terms of partner. Sometimes a partner who not violent, who not a criminal. You understand? A non-criminal partner sometimes can be the worst partner you ever choose. Because of the other things that they do. Alive?
Steve.
Alive?
What a barber's try Sunday for this man. I'm coming on this moment.
I'm telling you.
Let pull out with Houston some soothing song, you know. You see where you going, right? The pain still at the surface. You know?
I could sing it. You all want me to sing
it? No, don't sing, please. Really enough. But I understand what he's talking about, Wendell. Yes.
Yeah.
But it does not negate the fact that violence is violence, abuse is abuse.
Yeah. And
you need to be very careful who you choose to associate with in general relationships and intimate relationships, because it could cost you a lot.
Yeah. And sometimes
as my colleague and friend Wendell Stephen is very, very experienced to tell us.
Oh, sure. You know, and sometimes
it can change the course of your life.
People badness don't show up until a long time after sometimes, you know.
Well, I think if
badness in parentheses, right?
If you're astute and you look carefully and you're not clouded by the wonderful mist of love and enarmament, you may be able to see some. We always see some. Don't you think we always see some little signs, but we negate them because we're so in love and we so wanted to work. Sometimes we see little signs that we leave that alone now, man. That's all right. Didn't you say? There are always signs, you know.
Well, I hear that, but again, all the signs don't come early.
Well, yeah, but some signs, you know, they always telltale red flags.
Yeah.
And then I start up as pink flags and fuchsia flags, and then get into red flags later. Yeah, no pun intended. With red flag.
Oh gosh, boy, the stories I could give one of these days, eh?
Give one now.
Nah. No.
Like you're afraid lock up.
What? Lock up? What kind of thing I afraid is?
But it's a really sad story of a young woman who clearly had a lot of promise. And now she's gone.
Yeah. And I think she had recently resigned her job and was going to take up an offer in the Cayman Islands.
Really?
That's what I read too.
Yeah, I read somewhere of that.
Yeah.
Sad, really, really sad, really tragic. I guess Steve is now getting Mr. Browne so we could open the phone lines. He said he had 3 guests this morning. We had 1.
We have Mr. Browne, we have Karen Eunice Ishera.
And Karen Eunice Ishera. So maybe you can call Karen. had a conversation with Mrs. Nunes to share over the weekend.
You did?
Yep.
I can imagine how that went.
Probably you can't.
Is for Izzo news or is just a casual conversation?
Well, it was, talking about getting some insight into her thoughts on the spotlight presentation that was had on Friday by the Minister of Finance, and I guess the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Which I guess is what we're going to be speaking to her about today.
Yeah.
We should have tried.
Which is what we made an effort to Mariano Browne. Sorry?
Knowing, let me hush.
Well, she had some good points, actually. If you're presuming that it was all negative, it wasn't all negative.
Well, when we speak with her, we'll hear. But we should also have tried to get one of the people, because they have come under attack from no less a person than the opposition leader. That public servants were made to parade in front of the public. That is how Mrs. Prasad Bisesa described the people who went there to make contributions. You understand? Let me try to get her words.
All right. We're still waiting for Mr. Mariano Browne to join us.
She said, and I quote, "Once again, in what has become a running theme with this PNM government, unelected state employees were trotted out before the public and made to sing the praises of the Rowley regime under the nearby watchful gaze of Rowley himself." Why do public servants, health officials, all these people who really put out an effort to serve this country, come under attack all the time from this opposition league? Why? That's not fair. You understand? These people are professionals. Shouldn't be attacking them like that. You may not agree with the government, so attack the Prime Minister, attack Minister Imbert, but don't drag public servants into your negative views all the time, man. You shouldn't be doing that. Because these same people will probably be in office if you become Prime Minister again, God forbid. These are the people who will still be there in office, public servants. So you shouldn't really be saying the things you're saying about them. They call the worst things they had to say about Dr. Roshan Parashram, a man who served this country under the most stressful period ever. You know what I mean? And to say they were murder under the guise of what? She used the word murder. They were murdering people. I can't remember her exact words. I'm sure a listener will send it for me. When she spoke about the health officials at the time. State-sponsored murder or something, so some term like that she used.
Recording in progress.
We have Mariano. Oh, yes, we getting him now.
Yeah, he's connected to audio.
He's sitting behind his library of books again.
He might be in his pajamas, I think.
Paul, you changed your background too. I like that. Is that Parliament?
No, it's not. It's digital picture.
Of what the Parliament represents? The tea room? The breakout room?
We'll go with the tea room. We'll go with the tea room.
All are so obsessed with this tea room, let me tell you. Anyway. Let me fix that face. That better?
Oh, you're quick, man. HTTV.
Good
morning, Mr. Mariano Browne. How you doing?
Good morning.
Morning,
Mariano. I woke you up this morning.
The flu.
Oh, geez, and inches.
Sorry.
Well, speedy recovery to you. Speedy recovery.
Paul breaks it from you, Mariano.
Good morning, Mr. Browne.
Can happen.
How are you, sir? Well, I'm sorry that you're under the weather. I wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you very much.
Maybe the flu is called the spotlight.
Yeah.
Let's kind of segue into the conversation there. Let's start. Of course, we invite you this morning to talk about your impressions of the presentation on Friday by the Minister of Finance, of course, included the Prime Minister. What are your first-hand takeaways from it? Your initial takeaways?
Well, my first-hand takeaways were there are a couple of issues with regard to the data that was presented. So, for example, the Heritage and Stabilization Fund data is last year's audited financial statements 2021. We're in 2022, and we're about the second or third quarter that has passed. And we've had a lot of movements on the international financial positions, particularly in terms of stock markets and so on. So I'd be much more comfortable if I had my second quarter data this year for that. I suspect that the value of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund is not $5 billion. The same thing for the NIB. He used the NIB fund as well, but he used last year's numbers. And both of them would have been last year, for example, there was a huge uptake in the value of the fund. It's because the stock market had surged, both the Heritage and Stabilization Fund as well as the NIB fund. Now, this year, the markets have been depressed. So when you're using those two numbers from last year, you're giving me two inflated numbers relative to where we are. And I don't think that the numbers are the same. So that's those are the first points for me. Same thing for the foreign exchange. Why give me foreign exchange as at December last year? Right? This is we're in September. Right? Even the central bank website has the numbers for June. So why give it to me 6 months later? And when you look at the number for June as distinct from December, they're about this. They're about the June number is a little worse off than shows a little decline rather than the December number. So it's cherry picking the numbers that he presents to make certain that he presents a good picture. And that seems true for some of the other numbers that were used. So,
but it wasn't all good. One of the things that struck out to me was the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance spent quite a bit of time focusing on the fuel subsidy issue and the amount of money that the fuel subsidy is taking out of the economy. I think the 2 months that he identified it could be March, April, and May that identified 300 million for each month going to fuel subsidy, which seems from what the minister projected is unsustainable. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, he said it and he was showing the projection for next year as being $181 million a month, right? Which would put the fuel subsidy as $2.1 billion. I mean, the point, what he was attempting to show in a couple of those slides was that look how much money we're spending on these things, right? The fuel subsidy, we're giving $2 billion. The social and the social transfers is about $5.2 billion and so on. So I think that the real issue was to say to John Q. Public and to the unions in particular, because there was the second to last slides focused on the amount of money that it would cost if we were to give in to the union demands. So the issue was, I think, to put in the position and probably to deal with in a more expansive way before the budget speech, to basically say to the public, look, we have X amount of money, we can't do this. This is what the financial implications of these changes mean, and we can't do it. So I think it was to buy. It was in a sense not only to buy time, but to appeal to, if you want, a rationale of decency that we can't afford it, we can't pay for it, we can't pay for what they are.
To me, it was a preemptive strike one, so yes, that when the budget is read, we should not be surprised at a reduction in the subsidy and an increase in the cost of fuel. That's one.
Yeah,
correct.
I think that's what it was.
And I'm surprised that more of the mainstream media didn't pick up on that and go with it, because that is going to me, what the minister signaled and the prime minister signaled in is that, guess what, this fuel subsidy is costing us too much and we cannot continue, which I've said in the past, they will continue to widows of the subsidy at some level. And also in the conversation with the unions about the quote-unquote 4% offer, that if we go beyond that, this is the cost to the country down the road.
Yes, and I mean, but to be fair, the Guardian editorial picked it up on 2 days. Guardian editorial talk about managing expectations on the Saturday morning, And on the Sunday morning, they again focused on the budget by talking about in the spotlight, and then went on to talk about it. Well, that the way they presented a bit more information than they would have presented in the budget speech, right? They really they haven't addressed the issue, which is everybody is asking. Well, how do we fit in? Well, what are you going to do with this windfall gain? And I think that's the other point about it. The Minister of Finance is a politician. I mean, he's a career politician. He might be an engineer, but he's a career politician. He's been in office one way and in Parliament for at least 40 years. It's both himself and Dr. Rawi. And if anybody is going to be blamed for anything that takes place over the course of the next 2 years, it's going to be him. And he does have what you call it, other ambitions. So the whole idea is
who has other ambitions?
The Imbert.
What ambitions are you suggesting he has?
So the Imbert has leadership ambitions.
Leadership of the country?
Leadership of what?
Yes.
Of the PNM of the country?
Leadership
Yes.
of the Ministry of Finance?
Huh?
So you think you're suggesting Mr. Tembu wants to be Prime Minister?
But of course.
All right, that aside, you're talking about the positioning of the information. Let's talk a bit about the deficit situation and the initial deficit of the last budget, exacerbated by, of course, the spending on COVID-19 and other exigent circumstances, and the contextualization of that, and the revenues that we're getting now from the energy commodity prices, and what your thoughts are on where we are in terms of the budget deficit and what we can expect in the budget coming up.
What a budget deficit? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we still have a budget deficit,
mm-hmm.
whether we have a windfall gain or not, and the budget deficit is not likely to go away. Quite the opposite. I think if anything at all, it will get worse. Right? The only difference, the only change between 2014, well, there are two relevant changes, two important changes that have taken place. The first important change, which he didn't focus on at all in the presentation, was that our production of natural gas has declined. Right? We've gone from 4 billion. The country was short on natural gas. The sector was complaining at 3.3 billion cubic feet a day. Right? Angeline came in and the other one came in, and we went up to 3.6. And that was the high point. And we're now down to production, which fell to about 2.8 and continuing. It's kind of flattened out at somewhere between 2.8 and 2.9, struggling to get back up to 3. So in other words, we are 25% below the normal level. And again, about another 25% below even where we were in 2018. Now, so the only thing that has changed is that the total production has declined and that the prices have gone up. And as a result,
what is the net impact of that on what?
The net impact of that is that we've had, because prices have gone up by so much, we have a price impact. But the point is, if prices change or go down, we're in a difficult situation. And quite frankly, I mean, if we look at Trinidad and Tobago's economic history, we were in a boom between 1956 and 61. Prices fell, right? We ended up with 1970, right? We're in a boom from 1974, right, up until 1985. Prices fell in 1986, and we had a period of decline, right? We changed we changed the mix, and we stopped depending on oil and started selling natural gas. We had the economy multiplied by 300% in 9 years. And then we had a decline. So if prices go up today, what's the probability that it will fall again? The probability that it will fall again is high. So talking about that the economy is doing well. Economy is not doing well. We're not producing any more than we have. What we've had is an increase in prices. It's a windfall gain. Prices have gone up. So you absent the prices, take away the increased prices, take it away. And where are we? We're back to where we were we're in depression. So how long is the increased prices going to take? We had two things that have pushed the prices up. One, the war in Ukraine. Well, it's unrealistic to expect that the war in Ukraine is going to last for the next 5 or 7 years. All right. So we have to say, well, what's the maximum time that the war is going to last? A year or 2? All right.
And if other factors in the global market can mitigate that?
Well, I'm not certain that the other factors in the global market can mitigate that. The prices moved up in the 2021 in the first instance because we had COVID and there was a lockdown. Now, prices, a 5% change in market supply can have a bigger impact in terms of prices than 5%, which is what happened in the middle of 2021. Right? And at that stage of the game, he assumed, and he said that the market, that Trinidad and Tobago will do well. What happened? Well, we grew by -1%. So there was no real appreciation at that time. The real difference is that the war in Ukraine came in February and prices jumped up, ballooned. Right? So we have a completely external event. So Trinidad and Tobago is operating better because we have a war in Ukraine. No, that don't make no sense. The answer is that we have is increase in prices. So the answer is how long are those going to increases? So he's
Mariano, how then would you interpret? Let's use a company in 2019 making 100 million, but due to the pandemic, their products were more in demand and they made 200 million. Is it fair to say that they did better that year and that they're doing well? Would it be fair to say that?
But that's why I use the term a windfall gain. A windfall gain refers to the fact that this is something that is temporary. There are certain conditions which you are not responsible for that went up, and you made a benefit from it. Now, the hypothetical example that you are making is, I don't know where it would apply in this particular case. In Trinidad and Tobago's case, right, and if you look at the difference between other companies in the sector, other companies operating in Trinidad, which are, they're operating on endemic variables. They're operating on the basis of where Trinidad and Tobago is, or endogenous variables, where Trinidad and Tobago is at today's date. Well, some of them improving, some of them not improving so much. They're improving, right, because they were able to, people came back out and there was much more activity, so that the results improved a bit, right? So absent COVID, and take away COVID. COVID is what made things a lot worse. But we have been in depression. Has the depression changed? No. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Right? We have a change in prices of our energy sector produce, which has given the government a lift. Is the government more efficient? No. Are we producing more gas? No. Are we producing a significant more oil? No. Okay. So what we have is a temporary phenomenon.
Well, and added to that, one of the newspapers this morning is quoting from the CSO that the country's economy declined by 4% in the first quarter of this year due to the contractions in both the energy and non-energy sectors of 1.3 and 5.2% respectively.
What they're talking about, what that is based upon is what you call it, is what that index will probably be based upon production. And as I said to you, natural gas production fell. So that's where that number would come from.
One of the persons in the audience,
that index is not taking into consideration increased prices. It's taking into consideration was the volume of output.
The production, yeah. The production output. One of the persons in the audience spoke to the Minister of Finance, asked a question to the Minister of Finance, which was quite interesting to me, that your projections for the last how many budgets were always off in terms of economic growth. And the minister responded by saying he used the information given to him by the ministries of energy, etc. Is that part of the issue here, the fidelity of the numbers being given to the minister, or is it more an issue of political spin, as a politician will do, or a combination of both?
Well, I said to you all that the minister is in a very difficult position. He's in a difficult position. If there's anybody who's going to be blamed for what happened, they'll point to the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance is responsible, right? So he's in a hot seat. So he has to try to let everybody know. I mean, there are a couple of things here. You're talking about a national position and the person's position as a person, right? There are two interests here. One, from a political perspective, I want to instill some level of confidence in terms of the operation of the country. Right? In the second instance, I want to let everybody know that I have the hands on my tiller, and I've been trying to do the best with the available information and the available resources that I have. Right? There are two underlying, if you want, impulses there. And one of them is self-protection. Right? The minister didn't, at every occasion, from the first budget speech to the second budget speech to the third budget speech, the first he always says is somebody else give him the information. It's never him. He don't take responsibility for it. Right? He threw Franklin can in the bamboo the first year because his projection was off, completely off. Right? So it wasn't his fault. I only go in with the information coming from the ministry. Right? He at every moment in time, he seeks to minimize his personal involvement in the numbers. And there's an obvious reason for that. I mean, if anybody wants to dispute that with me, that's fine. But I mean, there's no doubt in where his position is.
There's no love lost between you and Minister Imber, yeah?
Well, it's self-preservation.
I have never had a physical fight or a verbal fight with Mr. Imber, you know. I have always been very clear when Mr. Imber makes those kind of cock-ups. I will say what I have to say. Right? So I don't have a fight with him. Right? And I'm not fighting him for the leadership position, and I'm not fighting him. I'm not on the inside fighting him to what you're going to be prime minister of the country. I'm quite outside here. I'm not involved in politics.
Well, I see females are rising. Liz Truss is the third female prime minister of the UK, as announced a short while ago. She is now the leader of the Conservative Party and the third female prime minister, following Margaret Thatcher and what's the woman name? Theresa May. And now Liz Truss.
Likely to be the worst.
Because of the challenges facing the UK. Because of the challenges facing the UK.
Yeah. She's not going to last. There's going to be an election in a year.
Somebody who lives in the UK do message to say, "Oh Lord, Boris still in office then."
Well, not far from that. She's not going to be. I don't think what you call it. I think there's a performance on the. I mean, it's been a race. On the bottom line, she said, and she said anything that was required that she figured would carry her into office.
And Rishi Sunak, or never dodged his affluent upbringing and lifestyle and connection to the he is who he is. So that to me was the biggest factor in him not being elected. He could not.
No. Let's get real, right? In a middle class, in an upper class, white conservative party where everybody old, you think they're going to elect a brown person? You can't win. It's impossible.
I didn't think so.
America elected a black president.
America didn't. Obama's mother was white. Let's get that clear.
And you think that had a big factor in it? He was brown.
Yes.
B-R-O-W-N-E or B-R-O-W-N?
No, it's B-R-O-W-N.
Just to the name. Let's go back to the issue. Let's talk about the issue of labor and what is going to happen. The 4% offer on the table, and the minister going into quite a bit of detail, and the prime minister about what to contextualize the position of 4%. And counteracting the union's demand as, and I'm paraphrasing here, unreasonable, untenable, unaffordable at this time. And what does that politically, especially heading into a local government election?
Well, we've been in this situation before. The CPO came into being in 1971, and every negotiation has been run since 1971 by the CPO. But we've had situations where we've had to, in a sense, cannibalize certain years and have some zeros. I've written about 2 or 3 articles on that. But effectively, there was a 9-year gap which was settled in 1999 or 2000, right? And there were about 7 zeros and about two 3s or 2 4s or something along those lines. And there's the period 1984. Remember in what you call it, just before the crash in 1980 and energy prices and what you call it, the government had offered 6%, 2, and 2, right? The unions had said that was unacceptable. No, we won't take the 6%. So they didn't take 6%. And government put 0 on the table. right? When they eventually settled, when PLM came into office in 1992, right? 1992, right? They reinstated the COLA, but for the 5 or 6 year period that they were dealing with, again, there were about three or four zeros, and then 2 small settlements, and the reinstated COLA somewhere in the middle of all of that. So there's precedent for this, and I'm pretty certain that the CPO is operating on the basis of precedent. We've been in this situation before. When you look at the numbers, if you put the union numbers in position and say that the government, just assume that the government would agree them, right? Or the government is forced to something and they cut them in half from what they're offering now, and they basically say they negotiate down to half of that. Well, that puts us in a situation in which the recurrent expenditure still shoots through the roof. Right? In which case, what is the option for government at that stage of the game? If you're in a continuous budget deficit, right, you're going to have to cut expenses. If the biggest expenses is HR, then you're going to have to basically furlough staff or alternately retrench. So, I mean, this is not news. This is what took place in Jamaica. That's what took place in Barbados. Right? Is what will take place here too. So there's some pretty stark choices on the table. Right? The reality is that the number of people working with government will have to fall. Government has to become more efficient.
But as you said before, there are significant political implications to those choices.
Well, of course there are. Right? And there's an election in 2 years' time. Right? So this is going to be one of the dominant features over the next 2 years. Right? Now, whether they will be able to drag it out for 2 years or have to come to some compromise in the meantime. But there are some harsh...
Do you think the unions are being unreasonable?
Well, I think the union leadership understands the situation very well, you know. I don't think there's anything outside that they can't understand. We all live in Trinidad. Trinidad has been in depression, not so. Right? Government revenue.
Do you think they are being unreasonable?
Well, if I'm saying they're being unreasonable, I think the membership might be being unreasonable. Right?
What do you think about the union that accepted the 4% already? The amalgamated.
I mean, anytime you see somebody break and run, right? Bottom line is they say, look, boy, I don't know what is taking place in the future. Yes, by going for what I can see now. I think that they're eminently sensible in the circumstances. The point is, right, that if you've been a rabble rouser, if you've been aggressive, what is the probability that people are going to take you on and say that you decide in a very short run, I'm going to accept what is going to take place. The membership is not going to be very happy with you.
Yeah.
I remember the union business is a business too. Eh?
Right. If the subsidies are reduced, where do you think that revenue should be placed as priorities?
Well, but first of all, the budget deficit is understated, you know. I mean, Mr. Imbert has done some fancy.
Well, that's why I asked you earlier on about what the contextualization of the budget deficit. Because there's 3 economists I spoke to over the weekend said they still don't know where the real numbers lie because, one, the data is not up to date, and 2, they're not factoring everything.
To know that the budget is understated. I mean, the bottom line, just go back to what you were. We know that they didn't pay VAT for a couple of years, right? And the VAT arrears was about $6 billion. Well, did they clear the VAT arrears? Well, the answer to that is no. But if you look at the revenue numbers he presented, you'll notice that the revenue that comes from taxes on goods, right, which was VAT, right, that it was less this year than last year. Well, if the economy had started to open up and there was more turnover in society, how come VAT is less? Well, the answer is that the way government revenue works is that is the cash flow. So if you what you call it, increase the level of the amount of refunds, then that would reduce the VAT receipts, and that's what the effect that we're seeing. If anything at all, VAT should be at least equal to where it was last year, or be higher than it. It's about $1 billion less. Well, if that is so, it's 6 billion is the thing from 7 billion. Well, if that is so, then you have to say that they've been paying off the old VAT. They've been starting to pay VAT, right? So that has some other numbers. How far behind are we in terms of the VAT payments? And then there's, of course, the question of contractors. There's the issue of EFCL. We shut EFCL down. What about all the debts which are due to contractors who were due by FCL, right? Essentially, The government has made no statement as to whether they're going to pay them off or not. Well, that's a pretty sleight of hand there. So they have a lot of issues where that budget deficit is concerned. And I'm not, I mean, routinely, I would expect the budget deficit to be understated by about $2 billion.
What would surprise us most, given what you've seen presented in the spotlight in the budget upcoming? What is going to be the sting in the tail that people are not really looking at?
When you say sting in the tail, what do you mean? Whether
I mean that very often I see the opposition and the MSG are saying it should be a people-centered budget. The ministers, they know the stark reality in his terms, as you said, depending on what you take of the numbers presented. What do you think is going to be the biggest surprise in the budget, if any at all? Or if there's going to be a surprise at all?
I don't expect any surprises in the budget. This is a windfall gain. What you would have to do is to make payments that you had not made before, right? So that and he said in the last budget we made provision for salary payments, for back pay, right? I don't see any surprises in it, quite frankly. Right? I mean, I can't see how we wouldn't have some reduction in the subsidy. I can't see how it's not going to take place. They've been fudging the issue with regard to what are we going to do. You put on the table that we have a subsidy towards TNTech, right? It was surprisingly low. I think at somewhere between $400 and $700 million. I thought that was quite low, given the fact that energy prices have gone up. So that could be that it probably is at that rate because we're using the lower prices for the payments towards NGC. So NGC is losing money where that is concerned. So the subsidy that they're talking about is an NGC subsidy, which is not part of the national.
Do you expect any new taxation measures?
Well, I think that I don't know what he's going to do, quite frankly. I mean, this is a difficult situation. One has to empathize with the minister here, right? Everybody expects that something good is going to happen or what new is going to happen, and the reality is that he doesn't have much to play with. He doesn't have anything to play with. I mean, this $8 billion is literally spent before he gets it. Right?
What are your thoughts, Mariano, on the proposed $200 million for healthcare workers, health sector workers?
Well, that's a. I mean, the minister in Barbados, the prime minister in Barbados did something similar. Right? So it's a recognition that okay, these guys worked harder, right? But from the time you start putting bonuses on the table and recognition on the table along those lines, then the whole basis of the negotiations have to take on a different light, because we're saying that there is merit in paying people more for a different level of service, for a higher level of service. Pay for performance now then takes on a new light. And that's one of the reasons why I think that they're attempting to, in a sense, is a special dispensation or a small payment that's moving in along those lines. It's a token. Yeah. It's a recognition. It's an attempt to buy, if you want. Say, okay, good. We can't pay everything, but we'll give you something. Right? And what happens when the police say the same thing? What happens when the prison officers say
they have already said so.
When teachers say the same thing. Right? Yeah. That's why I said he's in a real difficult position. And he has two eyes. He has to be careful. He has to kind of reach out to I can't say pretend. He has to reach out and be empathetic with the unions, because they will come for him.
Yeah. And as we close, what are your thoughts on the private sector aspect of this, the manufacturing sector, and what we will see next 2-3 quarters?
Well, look, the point is that none of the incentives have really been geared towards transforming the economy. I think the most important graph is the last graph, which sets out policy considerations. And those policy considerations were sort of very kind of obtuse. Right? Nobody looked at them, but they're the most important ones. And one of the statements there was continue to diversify the economy. Well, what does that mean? Because we really haven't continued, we haven't done anything, so far let's continue. So the issue is, what are the incentives? What are the directions that you want the private sector to go? What are the conversations the private sector have been having, and what help they need? Now, there's a very big lag variable where this is concerned. In Mr. Chambers in 1981 1983, after the perspectives of the new of the imperatives of adjustment, put a whole set of manufacturing incentives on the table. Those incentives did not take hold and didn't benefit the country until the middle of the 1990s. The country has started to move. Right now, you'll see the benefit of that when you look at Bermudez, you look at SM Jalil, you look at Associated Brands. They have a huge diversified portfolio in terms of what they sell and where they sell to. Those are three companies that will come to the top of the list immediately. They're not the only ones. Yet manufacturing only accounts for approximately 6% of GDP. Right? So it's still small. All right, but if you put in the petrochemical sector, which is what they did in 2012, the number rises substantially. So if you want to say the non-energy export sector, it's still relatively small. So you still have to do, so the country has to reposition itself. Exports, is it only going to be on the basis of manufactured exports, or are we going to reposition into services, and how is that going to work? Now that means that you have to make adjustments in the education system. You have to, the ease of doing business, all of those things have to change.
Why do all of these things sound so familiar?
Has the government really worked at changing those things in the last 5 years, 7 years, 8 years? The answer to that is no.
The conversation is still the same.
I say the conversation is still the same, right? You're not going to see any massive change in the private sector moving forward. They're going to do what they have to do. And in fact, some of them are investing abroad, right? We have what you call it, not so much a decline in manufacturing capacity in Trinidad. What has happened is that they're also investing closer to their energy to their relative markets elsewhere, right? So they're opening up plants in Dominican Republic, right? They're operating out of Costa Rica, right? They're going closer to Colombia, right? That says something.
And added to that, our FDIs are so diminished.
Our FDI is diminished because most of the import of, if you want, foreign FDI investment has basically come to the energy sector. Well, if the energy sector is languishing, right, and not increasing the production level, and there's no real exploration, well, then your energy sector number is going to also be full.
Is there an impact of the growth of the Guyanese economy on our situation?
Well, but Trinidad has been a staging post for Guyana and Suriname, right? It's not taking place in where everybody could see, because it's taking place on the west coast of Trinidad and Tobago. It's called Chagaramas. But Chagaramas has had a bit of a boom for the last 5 years. Right? It hasn't trickled through the rest of the economy. It's not been sufficiently big as to make a huge difference in terms of in terms of Trinidad and Tobago's GDP. But the answer is yes. There's been a positive. The growth of Guyana has had a positive effect on Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago's position would have been worse were it not for the growth of Guyana.
How so? Give us some details on that. How so?
Well, I mean, the essence, when Exxon was setting up in Guyana, where was its base? Where's its base operation? When Shell was doing additional exploration in Suriname, where is its base of operations? Well, that's economic activity. If you have all those ships coming and basically bunkering, replenishing, storing all their facilities here, those show up in the form of services. Right now, there's been a huge increase in terms of that service element. The growth of Rams Logistics, for example, in one company in particular, right? Rams Logistics growth is large, has occurred because of the growth in the energy sector companies operating, or the demand for their services for energy sector companies operating out of Suriname and Guyana. And one of the first companies to go to Guyana, Rams Logistics.
Is there potential to maximize that even more?
Yes, there's potential for because the objective conditions of Guyana haven't changed. Guyana is a shallow water port, right? So literally almost everything going into Guyana is going to open up in terms of its demand for what you call imports. As the economy has already grown by a factor, it's already doubled, right? It's going to double again in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean what Trinidad and Tobago's oil production is at what? 60,000 barrels. Well, Guyana is at 330,000 barrels. That's 5 times the amount, 5 times the figure, right? And they also will have the benefit of the energy sector boom in terms of prices. Now, they have a little problem in terms of renegotiating the contracts, in terms of when those contracts would be. Because when those contracts were signed a long time ago, before all these fines were hit. So all those agreements are in position, and the revenue that comes from them will go up on the basis of value, or volume rather than value in terms of prices. So there's a lot of work to be done in Guyana where that is concerned. Guyana has a lot of work to do. But having said that, right, Guyana is still at what is called a shallow draft port, right? Meaning that the vessels that could go into Guyana are smaller than the vessels that come to Trinidad. So Trinidad becomes a transshipment center. The same thing for Suriname, right? So the movement upwards in terms of Guyana is of benefit to Trinidad and Tobago, right? It's not visible to the rest of the country, but it is taking place.
We got to leave it there, Mariano. Thank you so much for your contribution and time this morning. Go take some Sudafed and relax.
Okay, thank you.
Take some meds.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks for taking the time. All the best to you, Mariano Browne.
Recording
Take care.
stopped.
All the best. All right, let's get into our news brief. All courtesy, Champlain Auto Services.
This is your news bulletin from Power 102 Digital.